Welcome to Liesel's Artistic Studio. Today I'm going to show you how to paint this rose with watercolors, and in just a minute I will also be telling you why I almost threw this painting away. So let's get started, and don't forget to like and subscribe. So really quickly, let's go over the supplies needed for today. First, I have watercolor paper cut to the size of 8 by 10 and taped down. Then I have a light pencil drawing of the rose I will be painting on my paper. Now, if you need help drawing this rose, no worries. Go back and watch my quick 8-minute tutorial on how to draw this step by step. You can find it by clicking the link above or at the end of this tutorial. Then I have just one brush I will be using for this painting today. This is a size 8 round brush with a nice point at the tip. Next, I have watercolor paints that I've already added water to. For my colors today, I have Azo Yellow, Alizarin Crimson, and Sap Green. And last but not least, I have water and a paper towel. For questions or details about any of these supplies, you can find it by clicking on the description of this video. All right, let's get into painting, and then I will tell you my silly story of why I wanted to throw this painting away. First, let's quickly paint the background of this picture using the wet on wet technique. So paint the majority of the background with water first, going around the rose, and then start adding some light color to the background, putting alizarin crimson near the top area with just a touch of yellow here and there, and then adding sap green to the bottom area, again with just a touch of yellow in a couple of spots. Keep in mind that you do want this to be very light in value, so if it feels too dark, add more water to lighten up the color, or use your brush or paper towel to soak out some of the color. Also, if you do get background color on parts of your rose, don't worry too much because we will be painting darker colors over the top. Okay, while you all work on your background, I'm going to start telling my crazy story by first asking all of you fellow artists, have you ever started a piece of artwork that you were really excited about, that you thought was going to turn out great, but then either halfway through it or at the end of it, you step back, you look at it, and you think, this is not what I was trying to do. This is not what I had in mind at all. It looks terrible. What happened? And then you start going through your options of what do I do now? Do I start over and try again? Do I just call this one good enough? Or do I give up because I just can't do it? Well, with that being said, I realize you probably don't have thoughts and feelings like that, but I know I do. So let's paint this next part of this picture, and I will tell you the experience I had with this painting in particular. Okay, now that the background is done, and while it is still wet, I'm going to add a few splatter marks around the rose. I'll do some green around the leaves and stem, and some alizarin crimson near the petals. I'm not going to do a lot of these. I don't want it to overpower the painting, which is also why I'm doing it while the background is slightly wet still. It will make the splatters blur and spread just a little so they're not too powerful. Then, also, while the background is damp, I'm going to add a few leaf shapes to the background. These will be separate from, but similar in size to the ones that have already been drawn. These leaves will blend and fade into the background a little, which is exactly what I'm wanting. So they will just give a hint or the idea that there are other leaves around. When the background and leaves are done, let it dry completely before moving on to the next step. All right, it's finally time to start painting the rose, and then I will finish my story. So, take some alizarin crimson and begin painting the center section of the rose in a nice dark value. The good news here is that because we have a drawing already done, we really just need to focus on one little section at a time. The key to painting these petals is the value, or the light and dark, of each petal. So, if all or part of a petal is dark in value, the petal next to it should be lighter in value. And if you have a light area on a petal, paint the adjacent one darker. That way, all the petals will show and stand out in their own way. However, with that being said, while you do this, keep in mind where shadow areas versus sunlit areas are, so that any dark spaces will be in the same place as the shadow would be, and the same with the light areas. One way I like to paint the petals so they can have a gradient from dark to light is to first paint a small section of the petal with the dark color. Then I rinse and dry my brush off and use the damp brush to pull and spread the color out, making it lighter as I go. Something else you'll notice as I paint this is that after I paint one petal, I usually don't paint the petal right next to it until the first one is dry. Otherwise, my paint will bleed into each other. So I will be jumping around a lot so I can continue to paint while other sections are drying. All right, while we work on these petals, I'll finish my story. So, when I first started painting this rose, I was really excited about it. I thought that the drawing was good, I'd tested out different colors to use, and I had it all planned. It seemed to start out okay, but as I was working on it, it was pretty late at night, and for some reason, it was taking way longer than I thought it would. But I was pretty focused on each little section when usually I like to take a break, look at it from a distance, make sure it's coming together okay. Well, I don't know if it's because I was too focused in or because I was tired or what, but I didn't step back to look at it until I was pretty much done. And then when I did take the time to look at it, I didn't like it. And the terrible part was I couldn't put my finger on why. It didn't help that I was tired and it was late, and so I kind of just got frustrated and decided to look at it in the morning to see if I could pinpoint what was wrong. So I get up the next morning, and at this point, my deadline to get my tutorial out for the week was just hours away. So as I look at the painting, I decide there's actually things about the drawing that I don't like. So I pull out my picture references and redraw the entire rose. I felt pretty good about the second drawing, so then I go to paint it. By this time, I had also decided to paint the head of the rose a different color and make the stem and leaves lighter than I had done this one. So I get started painting, and halfway through it, I look at the second one and thought, I don't like this one either. By now, I had gotten so far into the second painting that I figured it wouldn't hurt to just finish it, and maybe it would turn out okay. Well, I get it done, and I'm telling you, it was worse than this one. At this point, my deadline was looming, so I looked at the two side by side and decided my original rose, this rose, wasn't as bad as I had originally thought. So that is why we're painting this one today. There are still some things about this painting I don't like, so maybe I'll give it a try another day. But if there are any of you that get frustrated with some of your work or feel like it's just not the way you wanted or the way you pictured, I'm telling you, it happens to me too. I think the moral of the story is that sometimes the work we do really isn't as bad as we think it is. So don't throw it away, at least not yet. Now that the head of the rose is complete, let's paint the stem and leaves using the sap green. I start out with full color at the top of the stem, then rinse and dry my brush and use the damp brush to lighten and spread the color to the end. Then paint the branch for the leaves and the leaves themselves. I will be painting these using a similar method as the flower petals, putting on a nice dark green on either one half of the leaf or around the outer edges. Then I'll use a clean damp brush to spread the paint to the remainder of the leaf, creating a gradient of color. After all the leaves are painted and dry, the finishing touch for this painting are some thin green vein lines on top of the leaves. Thanks for watching and painting with me today. I hope you feel pleased and proud of the rose you paint. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please consider subscribing to my channel so I can continue to help you discover your artistic side.